If you are just trucking along on your book, loving every single minute of the writing process, then this video is not for you. If, on the other hand, you are where so many of us have been so many times before, just slogging through, wondering why you even wanted to do this in the first place, then I want to take this opportunity to talk to you about getting the fun back in your writing. I have been there and I have worked with so many clients who are right where you are. So today I want to break down what is going on with the fun going right out of your writing and give you 6 practical tips for bringing the fun back in, finding that love of writing that made you want to write this book in the first place. Stay tuned. Now, y'all know I don't normally offer discounts, but right now we are celebrating the 1 year anniversary of this YouTube channel, plus our full-time hire of our newest master book coach, Emily Thrash. So right now, when you sign up for a one-on-one coaching package, you are going to get a 50% off coupon for one of our a la carte publishing services. You can either watch to the end of this video to learn more about this offer or head over to pageandpodium.com/Emily. If you talk to any published author, they will tell you that there are times in the process of writing a book that just feel terrible. We just feel like we aren't making any progress. We just hate what we're doing. It happens to every single one of us, but when you're in that place, it kind of feels like you're the only one that's ever been there, right? It feels just as though you are never going to dig yourself out, and sometimes it feels like the only option is just to give up. Don't do that. I want to talk to you about how you can dig yourself out of this place by re-centering the fun. Remember, writing should be fun. It is a creative act, and creativity is really part of what makes us humans. So all we've got to do is get back in touch with that part of you that finds writing fun. But first, I want to just help you see that this is not something that you are struggling through on your own. So let's kind of talk about how this problem I'm talking about can show up. What are the actual symptoms you might be experiencing if you have lost the fun and you are just in this slogging burnout phase of your writing? So the most common thing, people will come to me and they will say, I just don't want to write. I wanted to write this book. I was so excited. There is nothing that I wouldn't rather do than write. I would rather be, washing dishes. I would rather clean my entire house. That's a very common one, by the way. Anything I can do to get out of this space of having to sit at my laptop and just produce more words. So if that's like you, it probably is showing up. Again, it could be showing up in, cleaning your house. Sometimes it shows up in kind of these writing rituals that get more and more kind of complex and convoluted as we go along. We're kind of rearranging our pencil cup. We're finding different spaces to sit. Well, we sit down. Oh, I forgot I've got to have my glass of water. All of these things that kind of come up as procrastination tools. Or one of the things that really comes up for me a lot is that I will need to just check in on social media really quick, right? I've got to, let me see kind of what's happened on Instagram. I haven't been on there in a while. Or sometimes I'll even say like, oh, I'm going to I'll just check the social media analytics really quick. Just got to pop over to this website. And before you know it, you have piddled away your entire writing time. And honestly, sometimes that place can lead us to another place that's really, really hard, which is this place of just deep cynicism, right? Where we think, you know what? It doesn't even actually matter. Nobody's going to read this. I'm not going to get it published. Who did I think I was to even think I was going to write this book? This book isn't going to be good. I don't want to do it. No one cares, right? This really cynical place, which, by the way, is a really classic symptom of burnout. So if you are feeling that, I do want you to kind of think inside of yourself. Are you somebody who has been really kind of burning the candle at both ends? Are you trying to do all of the stuff with your workplace, all of the stuff with your family and your friends, and add this book on top? without giving yourself the grace and the space to slow down and take care of yourself, which, spoiler alert, we're going to talk about that when we get to the solutions. But really, I want you to think about kind of, could this be a burnout situation? Is this a situation where it feels like you just get so much more exhausted? You just feel tired when you think about writing, even if you didn't feel tired before. When you think about producing something, it makes you feel just absolutely exhausted. We might also feel like we're going to get down on ourselves. Think about, I'm a terrible writer anyway. A client said this to me the other day, actually. She said, like, oh, it takes me a month to get a chapter done. And I said, it doesn't actually. Like, let's look back at your track record. She was actually usually producing a chapter every week, sometimes two, but usually she was actually making great progress, which is how I knew the fun has gotten sucked out of your writing. When you start to feel like that, when you start to have these thoughts about your writing ability and your writing capacity that actually don't jive with reality, that is a really, really great sign that we've got to do something different. You are not going to force yourself into being a more efficient writer by shaming yourself about not being an efficient enough writer, right? It just doesn't work that way. Whenever we start to get down on ourselves like that, probably what we're doing is actually just perpetuating this feeling of, everything is terrible. I'm not good at this. There's no point in any of this work. And I know for a lot of you too, there's probably, you probably do have the ability to force yourself to get words on the page. I know, particularly when I am working with people who are really high producers. So often this means they are writing, their book that they want to write, and then they also are writing for work. So this can be, academics, sometimes it's journalists, sometimes this is common among, if you're a business owner or you're a marketing professional, you're like putting out newsletters and blog posts, that kind of thing, that you can actually force yourself to get words on a page. You've probably got some kind of little tips and tricks. I've got 20 of these that I share with our memoir method people, things like setting a timer, going for a drive. You know how to manufacture the words on the page, even if you don't feel like you want to, even if really it's the last thing you want to do. You have developed these techniques along the way that help you get words on the page. But you will know when all the fun is out of your writing, because it will never ever be enough. So while you have forced yourself, you didn't want to do anything, you forced yourself to sit down, get 500 words, 700 words, if you're thinking in pages, maybe just 2 or 3 pages, and you still feel like you didn't even make a dent, you are just not getting it done. That is another way that this issue of kind of the fun leaching out of your writing is going to show up for you. And I want to talk about, these are kind of the symptoms, right? And oftentimes we will think of these as kind of the root is, well, I'm not good enough. Well, is that a root cause of why I'm not making progress? Or, I'm not ever getting enough done. I'm never going to get this done. No one likes it. We kind of think of these as root causes. But what I want to point out to you is those are not the root. And the more we can kind of dig down into what is happening for you, the better equipped we're going to be to really use solutions that target those causes. So what we're not going to do, right, is look and say, oh, well, you know what, I only got 500 done. That's not enough. That's not enough. Like, let me just kind of push through. Well, if the cause of the problem wasn't that you aren't getting enough done, the cause of the problem was something that was deeper, then forcing yourself to try to sit down and do 500 more words, probably you are making that problem worse. So I want to dig into some of the causes that I have seen when I work with clients one-on-one, and Emily also works with clients one-on-one. We both have kind of seen the same things. What we often will see is that there is something much, much deeper that actually is a much more treatable cause. When we think about these things where we're just kind of beating ourselves up, we're shaming ourselves, oftentimes there's no real clear way to take care of that. On the other hand, if we can look at what's really happening, truly, very often it is not so difficult as you think to attack that problem, really get back into this creative flow that I know you want to be in. So tell me if any of these are really relatable to you. Now, one thing, and by the way, I think this applies to fiction, nonfiction, to narrative nonfiction versus prescriptive. Every type of writing you're doing, you can fall prey to any of these causes. And I want to tell me, are these things that you have experienced, do these resonate with you? Because I want to think about kind of how are we coming up on these things, and how can we, as a writing community, as somebody that gives a lot of professional writing advice, how can we try to kind of combat some of these? I'm trying to do that a little bit in this video, just by pointing out some of the ways that we get sucked into this vortex of thinking we're not good enough, thinking that we have to slog along. Because I really do think a lot of these are really understandable things, but they're not good. They don't serve us. So the first thing that I will say, I see this all the time, is a lot of times we will suck the fun out of our writing by not focusing on the writing, but focusing instead on what we want out of the writing. So usually this isn't how we start. When we start, we want to write a book, and there is a big component of just feeling the pride of, I can imagine myself as a published author, and that's just something I really want to do, and let me see if I can do it. Let me just see if this is something I can do. Let me see if it's something that I enjoy. And usually when you come into a writing project like that, that is enough to help you enjoy it, right? Because it's creative, there's a curiosity, there's a challenge. So particularly if you're the type of person who really likes to kind of learn and master a new skill, this is a great opportunity, right? You're kind of learning, and you're on YouTube because of this, right? You're looking at how do people think about memoir? How do people, map out their structure for a romance novel? Or how can I make kind of all my blog posts into one coherent book, whatever it may be. But as we start going along on the writing, as it inevitably gets harder, as we inevitably get more tired, sometimes we will just really gradually shift our focus. So where we had originally been thinking about kind of how can I make this fun, like what a fun adventure I'm going to have as I'm writing, sometimes we'll just really gradually shift over to where that part, the process part, doesn't matter. All we are focused on is the book deal. All we are focused on is what is the cover going to look like? How is this going to get into my hands? Am I going to have to self-publish? Am I going to have to pay to publish? Am I going to be able to get an advance or an agent or whatever it is that is your goal? That we start to forget that that is something that is going to come quite a bit later. When you are drafting, thinking about kind of how you're going to get into the publishing stage, you're about 20 steps too early, right? We're going to have the draft. We're going to have to revise it. We're going to probably have to get some feedback. There is a lot to do before we get there. And what I think is easy to forget is that focusing on the eventual outcome is actually not motivating. What is going to be motivating to get you through a book length project is going to be to focus on the process, to find the parts of writing, the actual writing part itself, whether that is learning, whether that is kind of experimenting with words, whether that is looking back at what you've written and admiring it, whatever it is about the process that really feeds your soul. Whether that's the challenge, whether that's the accomplishment of the words on the page, whatever that might be, when we lose sight of that in favor of this eventual goal that's way down the line, that is a recipe for just losing all of your motivation. What you are essentially doing is shaming yourself for not being somewhere that you would have no business being right now anyway, right? Where we are right now is in the process. So as we are kind of thinking about what is causing it, is what is causing it for you? Have you gone away from some of the original reasons that you wanted to write that book and gotten really sucked into kind of focusing only on the publishing, focusing only on the eventual reception, the reader reception, whether that's going to be regular readers that buy your book, agents, publishers, whoever that might be. So as you're thinking about that, I also want to kind of add to this that sometimes when we start to get in that place where we're really, really focused on this end game, we're really focused on how are we going to publish this. One thing that can happen is we start to get in this mindset of, well, I've just got to knock it out. Oh, I used to do this to myself all the time. I'm just going to knock it out, right? All right, if only I had just one Saturday and I could just spend the whole day, I could just finish it, and then I wouldn't have to think about it. Ugh, as I said, I did this all the time to myself, so I totally get it. But when we think about what are we really doing when we're telling ourselves to knock it out, If there has ever been a clearer way to tell ourselves this is not going to be fun, it is that, right? When we are thinking about knock it out, just get it done, oh my gosh, that makes it sound so grueling, right? What kinds of things do we knock out, like cleaning the bathroom? I'm going to knock out cleaning the bathroom. I'm going to knock out things that are not fun, right? That's what we knock out. Well, first of all, probably you're not going to knock it out, right? I mean, it depends a little bit on what you have left, but I find that most of the time when we get into this headspace, we have a lot left, right? You might have half your book, you might be a little further, maybe you've got a quarter left, but usually we are not in a place to actually knock it out when we're thinking like this, right? Really, we have a lot left to do. So when we start telling ourselves we're going to knock it out, well, then what happens, right? Okay, we pull that Saturday, we find this time, okay, I'm going to knock it out. And then you're just right back in those symptoms we talked about earlier, right? You find yourself right back into where I'm going to clean my house really quick. Then I'll feel like I can clear my mind enough to get this done. Or I will tell you that I really experienced this when I was working on my master's thesis, is I would say like, okay, and here's what I would do. I would go with my husband to he worked at a university. I would go with my husband to his job, and then I would be in his office while he was teaching all day. And I would be like, okay, there's nothing else for me to do. I'm going to knock it out. Well, if you would have come and watched me, you know what I was really doing was playing around on Facebook all day because I was so exhausted. And the knock it out thing, that is sheer willpower. We are not treating the cause there. What we are doing is allowing ourselves to try to shame ourselves, to try to bully ourselves, to try to push ourselves in ways that really aren't going to work, right? So if you are hearing yourself do this knock it out thing, I want you to think about whether convincing yourself that you need to knock it out is actually really undermining progress that you could be making. So another thing that example of me just shutting myself in my husband's office and trying to knock it out, another thing that really brings to light is that sometimes one of the causes is that we have really bought into this idea that writing is a solo endeavor. And this is so easy to think, and it goes again right along with that knocking it out thing. Is we think, you know what, if I try to involve other people, if I go to a writing group, if I, bring on a coach, if I have an accountability partner, I am just wasting time when I do that. I am just distracting myself. I'm going to go to writing group, we're just going to talk the whole time. Really, a lot of times, the reason that we feel like all the fun has gone out of our writing is that we are just trying to do it on our own. We are trying to kind of get into our head. We're doing that shining thing, right? Where we're going to go up in this hotel on a mountain in the snow and we're just, oh, okay, I'm going to just isolate myself and I won't be distracted. Oftentimes, though, having a community around us is not a distraction, but rather a motivation. It is a reminder that we have set out to do this thing that is going to help other people, serve other people. So think about, are you trying to go it alone? Is that what is really causing you to feel like this isn't fun? Have you kind of cut yourself off again, often as a way to punish yourself because you haven't made the progress that you think you should be making? And then, of course, I've got to add this last bit because I know so many of y'all watching are working on really tough subjects. So oftentimes it's memoir. That watch this are working on trauma memoir, but if you're working on, a fiction that has a tough topic, if you're working on a prescriptive nonfiction, how to self-help, that sort of thing, that is a hard topic, I also want you to be really kind to yourself because I will say across the board, every client I have ever worked with who is writing about a really traumatic event in their life, the more traumatic that event, the slower the writing gets. That is normal. That is natural. We are reliving things that are really, really hard. We're reliving things that were hard when we lived them. And when we write, we very naturally go into this place that often I hear people describe as similar to method acting. And if you are familiar with method acting, that is where where actors will kind of live, like inhabit the body of the character that they're playing. That can be great. Ghostwriters do that all the time. When I ghostwrite, I am absolutely kind of inhabiting the body and the mind of the person whose voice I am replicating. That is a normal thing. But be kind to yourself because you are stepping into, if you're writing these hard subjects, you are not stepping into this happy, fun place, right? you are stepping into a place that is really heavy, that is exhausting. I mean, this feeling of fatigue and tiredness and exhaustion, that's an emotion, right? It can be that we are physically tired, it can be that we're mentally tired, but there is also a strong emotional component that when we are in the middle of trauma, we feel tired. Maybe we're not. I will tell you what, sometimes I'm working on something that's really hard and I feel exhausted and I make myself go for a walk. The second I step out on the trail, I am alive. I have so much energy, right? So, the other thing you need to remember is as you are going through these really tough parts in your book, it is very likely and very understandable that you are going to start to feel really fatigued, that you are going to lose the fun out of your writing, and you are going to really have to push yourself in this way that often is really unhealthy, right? So let's give ourselves some grace and think about what are some of the practical ways that we can address all of these causes to bring back in the joy of getting those words in the page, the reason that you wanted to do it in the first place. So I promised you 6 solutions, and let's get into them because I think between the 6 of these, you are going to be able to find that space of joy and excitement and creativity back so that not only can you get your book done, that's great. We want to get your book done. But really, what I want more for you if you are in this place is I want you to rediscover why this is such a rewarding, fulfilling thing to do in the first place. I said at the beginning of the video, and it is so true. Creativity is part of what makes us human. When we lose our creativity, when we get into that kind of worker drone mode that we can put ourselves into so easily, we are cutting out this piece of who we are, of why we are here. If you are at all spiritual, whether that's, organized religion or, it's something that is a little bit different than that, you will probably resonate with this idea that our creator, our source, or however you like to think about that, really put us on this earth to be creative, to create things, to express who we are. And that is the beautiful thing about writing. So I want to help you reconnect because I think that is the missing piece here, right? We've got these problems, these symptoms that I talked about. We can tie them to the causes, but the more we just get in the cycle of working through the causes and the problems, I think the easier it is to go farther and farther and farther away from what we really need to connect with, which is this deeply human, deeply spiritual act of communicating, of expressing, of really feeling in a way that is vulnerable enough to invite others into it. Okay, so 6 solutions. My first solution is that I want you to take whatever that topic is that you're writing about. This is especially helpful, by the way, if it's trauma, conflict, struggle. I want you to take whatever it is you're writing about, and I want you to think about how the opposite also exists within that topic. So, what I mean by that is if you are writing about a trauma, I want you to think about the joy that that trauma is blocking. If you are writing about a conflict, I want you to think about the unity that that conflict is getting in the way of. If you are writing about a struggle, I want you to think about the resilience and the energy and the spirit that is on the other side of that struggle. All of us have both of these things in us all the time. This was one thing that really I found was really helpful when I was working on with my co-author Andre E. Johnson, when we were working on our books about Black Lives Matter. That is a heavy topic. We were writing a lot about police violence, about structural racism, about just ongoing years and decades and centuries of oppression. And that gets really, really heavy. And one thing that I really appreciated that my co-author Andre would remind me of is that really the reason that these are important topics is because what we're seeking is justice, right? We are seeking something on the other side that is going to facilitate not more suffering, but joy and love and all of these things, again, that make us human, that are being robbed of Black folks when we are under these systems of oppression and injustice. We can focus, and we must focus on the struggle and the conflict and the overcoming. We must focus on that. But the reason we focus on those things is because we believe in the joy and we believe in the love. And we know those things are important enough to fight for. So I want you to think about, can you reframe the way that you're approaching this topic, not necessarily in your writing, although maybe, but probably in your mindset. Can you think, instead of what am I fighting against, can you think about what am I fighting for? This is so much more motivating. And if you are finding yourself just bogged down by the weight of your topic, I really want you to think about, is there a way that you can position yourself not as being kind of pushed against, but by pushing against for a greater cause than what that struggle itself is? Can you frame this as getting through to the other side? It's going to feel a lot better. And the more you can really embrace that, this joy and this love and this light, the better it's going to feel for you to push forward, keep working on this book, and know that it is going to be meaningful. Okay, my second tip is I want you to think about, who can you serve? Now, this I think is so interesting, because when I talk to authors, almost always the authors that come to me, when I ask them, why do you want to write this book, which I ask everybody that, a lot of times the answer in the beginning is, I want to help other people. I want to find a way to use my story or use my expertise or whatever it might be to serve people who need that story or need that expertise or need that inspiration or whatever the case may be. But often we really flip that. And I think it's really human, so I don't want you to hear me judging at all here. But what often happens is that as we're moving forward, we put a lot of pressure on ourselves because, of course, in order to serve those people, we have to find a way to get that book out. And this is where this focus on our eventual publishing comes from, right? This cause of, oh my gosh, I've got to get a publisher, I've got to get an agent. Is this good enough? And it will send us into this spiral of self-doubt that is never, ever going to motivate us, right? So take a step back, because I bet you are just like these folks that I have talked to, that you really wanted to write this book, at least in part, because you believed it could serve others. All right, well, who are you going to serve? Picture that person. Find one person in your mind. It might be someone you know. It might be, kind of an amalgamation of a lot of people you know. It might be just an imagined person that you can kind of, you can see how they are at a place where they're going to need this wisdom that you're going to share. But I want you to really deeply imagine them. What are they going through? What kinds of things are they feeling on a day-to-day? How does that show up in their body? How does that show up in their mind? How does it show up in their behaviors? If you are writing a memoir, you know how it shows up, because it showed up probably that exact way for you, right? So get in touch with that person. How would you be kind to them? How would you support them? How would you serve them? Because when we get in this framework, this mental framework of publishing, we have forgotten who we're serving other than ourselves, right? Publishing becomes so much about us that I have to get an agent. I have to get a publisher. What does it say about me if this isn't good enough? What if I don't get it done? What does that mean? That is not healthy. Really, as I have said a number of times in this video already, the reason we write, the reason we create is not to serve ourselves. It does, of course. It serves ourselves in many, many ways, actually, most of which don't have to do with the publishing either. But we do this to communicate, right? To commune. And to communicate literally means to bring two people together, to unite yourself with someone else. So remember, visualize, make that person concrete. Who will you serve? And then when you sit down at your laptop, don't focus on serving yourself. Don't focus on serving publishers or agents. Focus on who you can serve. All right, the third thing is a fun thing, and that is, I want you to give yourself permission to play. Now, this might look a lot of different ways, but the way I want you to think about giving yourself permission to play is to reconceptualize, just for a moment, the way that you are thinking of your book's format. Now, this doesn't mean we're going to change the book's format. This just means we're going to play a little bit until we reconnect with the joy of getting those words on the page. So how might this look? Well, one thing that I really like to do if you're working on a memoir, if you're working on fiction, is instead of writing it as a scene, what if you tried writing it as a script? What if you focused on a scene that is really dialogue heavy and you allowed yourself, in memoir especially, you allowed yourself to just fictionalize it so that you weren't having to step back into this trauma quite so much. You will a little bit, quite so much though. And you just let yourself imagine, what if this was fiction? What if I wrote it as a script? It might also look like getting all of your favorite colored pens out. I have a whole pencil cup full of colored pens, and making a bulleted list where every single item on your list, everything you would want to cover in that scene, you write it in a different color. You end up with this beautiful notebook that is all beautiful bright colors. I love a color. If you are writing prescriptive nonfiction where you're explaining a point, what if you found a story and just told a story and allowed that to paint the picture? On the other hand, what if you were writing a scene and you just wrote it as an explanation? What if you let yourself tell, not show, right? What if you made an illustration? What if you acted it out? What if you did a dance? What if you sang? How could you get this idea out of you without forcing yourself to follow the orthodoxy of writing? What if you allowed yourself to break the rules? See how creative you can be with this particular part of your writing process, because a lot of times, even though again, I'm not encouraging you to dump your book and turn it into an interpretive dance, but sometimes all we need is some kind of a reminder through doing that what we set out to do in the first place was express ourselves. What we set out to do in the first place was be creative. And when you allow yourself to exercise that creativity, you are going to find that it is so much more enjoyable when you do get back into the rhythm of the way you're envisioning your book. When you do get back from the illustration or back from the colored pens into the book, you have that spark relit. You've relit that fire in you to create and express, and it's just going to make it a lot more enjoyable the more you can connect with that human need to create. Okay, the fourth thing, if you are feeling isolated, if you are feeling lonely, if you have locked yourself in either a cabin or a haunted hotel or your office or wherever it might be, I want you to think about, if you are feeling lonely, how are we going to combat that? And one thing that we know from psychology is that the best way to combat loneliness is not just to kind of be around other people. You're probably around other people. The best way to combat loneliness is to help other people. So here's what I want you to do. You're already focused on serving. We talked about that one already. But here I want you to think about, how can you connect with someone else who is where you are now? They're working on their book. They're probably in the slog. All of us are in the slog at some point, right? Can you go in a writing group, an online, a Facebook group or something like that? Are there writing kind of physical writing groups in your area? Do you know other people who like to write? I want you to reach out to them, and I don't want you to ask them to help you. I want you to ask how you can help them. Do they need a listening ear? Do they need somebody to sit with them and hold them accountable? Do they need somebody to check in at the end of their scheduled writing time? What do they need? Oftentimes, this is all we need to remind ourselves that we are okay, we are safe when we ask for help, and that we do not have to do this alone. That, in fact, we aren't doing it alone. There are people all over, all around us who are going through the same thing. And there's no reason we need to shame ourselves. There's no reason we need to punish ourselves. We are doing a totally normal thing. We are experiencing a totally natural experience. So this is a great thing if you are feeling really lonely and isolated, if you are somebody who feeds off of the energy of being around others. Reach out. Find somebody who's in the same place as you and ask them how you can help. I promise you, this is a magical trick. You can do it in writing and you can do it in not writing. If you just feel lonely, it is a great way to escape that kind of heaviness and that kind of heavy feeling. Okay, the fifth, the penultimate tip that I have for rediscovering the fun in your writing is I just want you to sit and I want you to just meditate. You can journal if you want to, on what it means to enjoy the process of writing. Now, this is going to be personal for you. Everybody has a different way that they find to enjoy the process of writing. I am somebody who, for me, learning is very, very fulfilling. I love to learn. This is why I was in school so much, so long in so many areas, because I love to learn new things. I love to read about them. I love to discover them. I love to try them. So for me, what is so fulfilling about the writing process is trying kind of new formats, experimenting with how I can kind of, get words on the page in different ways, how I can, kind of trick my brain into thinking differently, or move my mindset in a way that motivates me forward. I like to learn these kind of tricks of the trade. But for you, it might be something totally different. For you, it may be that you like to get words on the page and then go back and admire them and really feel like, oh my gosh, did I make that? That is a totally valid way to enjoy the process. You may be somebody who it really feels good to you to kind of check off a to-do list, right? Well, what does it feel like if you, would make a sticker chart, or if you would make kind of a big, huge to-do list like the Memoir Method checklist? We offer that, by the way, at pageandpodium.com/checklist, where you have got a step to follow at every place in the way. Is that what you enjoy in the process? Is really feeling like you're moving through this process? What is it that you love about the process? Because what we're trying to do here is get away from this sole focus on the product that tricks us into thinking we got to knock it out. Well, if we enjoy the process, we are reminding ourselves that when this is done, we're actually going to miss this part. And you will. You will. I've written a lot of books, and I will tell you, every single one of them, when I finish that draft, there is a little period of mourning that I'm not going to live in that world in the same way anymore. That goes true, by the way, for narrative nonfiction like memoir, as prescriptive nonfiction, a how-to or some kind of other kind of explaining type of a book. And I've heard it from my fiction author friends and clients as well, is that we are living in this world while we're writing it. What a magical thing. But there's an end to it. So if we don't enjoy the process while we are in that magical world, we're really robbing ourselves of something that's pretty amazing. So how can you step back? How can you, instead of having all these thoughts of I've got to knock it out, I'm behind, I've got to get it done, how can you replace those thoughts with I want to enjoy what I'm doing? I want to embrace and cherish this moment that I will never have again. You will never have another moment that you are drafting that particular part at that particular time in your life of that particular book. You'll never have it again. How can you embrace it? How can you take it for the gift that it is, for the piece of your humanity that it is, and really focus on what you are doing in this moment, ground yourself, and focus instead of looking forward to what you hope or believe, or often don't believe, is going to happen after that draft is done. And then the last thing I want you to do is I want you to just let yourself play. In this one, we are stepping totally away from the book, and what we are going to do is we're going to go on a creative play date. Now, sometimes this is a little bit overly unbounded, so people kind of have trouble imagining what I'm saying. So let me give you a few examples. One thing that I really like to do is go to a thrift store and give myself like $10, right? And I love like the costume jewelry at a thrift store. So I love to just go and kind of sort through all of like the kind of gaudy necklaces, and often there are some really pretty kind of vintage brooches that you can kind of look at, and I love to look at that stuff. It reminds me of being a kid and going through my grandmother's jewelry box. She had all the like big clip-on earrings, That makes me feel so kind of creative and alive and inspired, and it really puts me in touch with my inner child. I also will sometimes I'll color. I have coloring books. Now I have like the adult coloring books that are the kind of abstract shapes and patterns. But I also just like to go online and search mermaid coloring page and print it out and color it. Do you like to do that? Do you like to paint? Do you like to draw? What kinds of fun, creative things can you do that, again, are totally unrelated to this book? We are not going to try to kind of reverse engineer this until it's something that's productive. The whole point is to allow ourselves to not be productive. So what would be fun to you? What would feel creative and expressive? Do you want to go to the park? Do you want to take pictures? Do you want to print out some pictures and have them framed? Do you want to go to a place where you paint on canvas, or you make a clay pot, or whatever it might be? What would be fun? What would allow you to reconnect with that part of you that so deeply wants to create and so deeply wants new things to come from you and be in the world and exist in the world? How can you reconnect with that part of you? Whether that's your inner child or some other part, however you like to think of it. How can you nurture that part of yourself? How can you feed that part of yourself? Because with this sense of burnout, with this sense of fatigue, the sense that all the fun has gone out of your writing, really what we are feeling is that the part of us that wants to create is just starving to death. That we have not fed it, we have not nurtured it. And while that is totally understandable, it happens to every single one of us, it is never ever too late to reverse course. That part of you is still there, that part of you is still alive. You've just got to get reconnected with them, you've got to think about what they need, and then you've got to give it to them. Okay, so I made this video because I really hate to see when people are kind of beating themselves up, when they're struggling with the shame, they're really pushing themselves to get done. To me, the beauty of writing is not the beautiful finished product, the perfectly edited book. The beauty of writing is the expression. It's the connection. I want all of you to feel that. So if you are feeling like you've got to get out there and you've got to do something different, I hope you will do it today. Don't put it off. Go right now. Don't do your writing. Skip your writing time. It's the only time I'm going to tell you to do that. Go recharge so that when you come back, you will feel so much more connected with what it is you're doing. This book is so important to you. I know it is. And it is worth slowing down, reconnecting, so that you can enjoy the process of getting that story on the page. Very, very happy writing. I'll talk to y'all soon. I am so excited to be celebrating the 1-year anniversary of this channel, plus our newest hire, Master Book Coach, Emily Thrash. And that's why, as I said at the beginning of this video, we are offering 50% off one of our a la carte publishing services. Now, that can be a full book cover design, it can be an interior layout, it can be copy edit on your full manuscript, it can be a proofread. Any one of our a la carte services is on the table for this offer. All you need to do is sign up for our one-on-one coaching program, Editor in Your Pocket, by September 13th, 2024. Now, when you do that, you are going to get not only that 50% off, you are getting our amazing Editor in Your Pocket program. I am so proud of this program. With this program, you not only get that weekly 50-minute one-on-one time with your master book coach, you are also getting weekly developmental feedback on every single one of your chapters. So what does that mean? It means we will know exactly where you are. We will know where you need help and when you need that help. We can give you the confidence you need to keep going even when you're not sure if your manuscript is any good or not. And by the end of this program, most people have either a full set of feedback on their full first draft, or if you're efficient, you can even get a full set of feedback on your second draft. That is priceless. So all you need to do to get in on this offer is head over to pageandpodium.com/Emily. You'll learn more about our 50% off offer, and you can also click over to read more about the Editor in Your Pocket program.